Today our message, brought by Mauricio Quintero, is from Toledot, and it's called, he entitled it, Do Not Be Fooled by Appearances. It's written in Mishlei in Proverbs 16:32 that it's better to be patient than mighty, to have self-control than to conquer a city. Pirkei Avot, which is the ethics of our fathers in chapter 4:1, refers to this, saying, Ben Zoma said, "Who is powerful? He who controls his inclination to evil, his Yetzer Hara. As it is said, he who is slow to anger is better than being strong, and he who rules over the spirit of it than he who takes a city." I've been thinking about this a lot this week. Since this past September, I had to meet with a community to resolve a conflict over damaged infrastructure, maybe instead of community, a company. At first I thought this would be easy to fix. What could go wrong? My ignorance and pride blinded me. So I missed the main point of conflict resolution: communication. I learned that to resolve conflicts, not everything is muscle, not everything is money, and not everything is a good idea. What's important is to introduce solutions with a healthy dose of humility, and by listening and then speaking. Apparently, Isaac is regarded as a weak man. He was not an Abraham who was willing to fight 5 kings to save his nephew Lot, nor was he a man willing to expel his son Ishmael, or to sacrifice his only son, or to face an Ephron the Hittite or a Pharaoh while keeping his temper. It's said that of Isaac that he was a pampered son, a man who dwelled in tents. He was not a warrior with a strong bow living by the sword. But in the barbaric society of those days, he would have been a man unfit to form a nation or to govern as a strong and self-confident leader. From this perspective, I would like to develop my message. As men and women of emunah, faith, we don't need to demonstrate characteristics that make us fit to be leaders, nor to generate changes within society. Rather, our goal should be to have self-control and to learn from what happened to me when appearances deceived me and resulted in a loss of time and my health. In the Akedah in Bereshit 22, we read how Isaac, how he knew how to hold his temper, how to control his temper, and be obedient when faced with being sacrificed by his father. How many of us would have had the ability to lie still on the altar and not run away? In the end, an apparent weakness was truly to his credit. He was a man who honored his father. He had emunah, and this was a strength. It was not a weakness. Then we read that Isaac was told not to mix with the Canaanite women, which would have caused him to have to wait 40 years. To wait for a wife until he was 40. And he remained a one-woman man. At that time, and even today, sexual self-control is an Achilles heel in a sexually corrupt society. Canaan was not exactly a healthy place to raise a child, since the women were not sexually pure. We see by Isaac's behavior the effect of the spiritual and moral nutrition that he received from his father Abraham. As we read in 29:19, Abraham fathered or nurtured Isaac. Avraham cholid et Yitzchak. Our sages say that the general idea of this portion would be like saying Abraham gave birth to Isaac, that he nourished him in his actions, in his works, in his thoughts, to be a man worthy of continuing the spiritual and physical descendants of his father, and that his life would reflect his way of being, his essence. Then we read in chapter 26 how patient Isaac was when he was digging wells. He did not despair when famine hit the land where he lived, nor did he flee to Egypt due to the famine, but instead he learned to listen to the voice of the Eternal. We read that in chapter 26, verses 3 to 6. And he managed to maintain his finances. How many people today are in trouble because they cannot manage their finances? I won't go into detail, but in my country, there are too many easy options to finance debt due to our lavish tastes and expenses and needs. How do we act in the face of an economic crisis? For example, how do we act? How do we deal with having surgery? Or do we deal with living above our means for pleasure items? Not only for sexual pleasure, but also for things that satisfy our ego, our pride, showing off, look what I have, or being overtly generous to simply show how blessed we are by the Eternal. It's sad that instead of controlling our spending, we prefer to live a life of luxury filled with unnecessary things so as not to deprive ourselves of pleasure. Do you know that most nations owe more than 100% of their gross national product, their GDP? For example, in El Salvador, 75% of the population cannot live within their means. They cannot live on their salaries. And so they resort to easy but expensive and extra financing on their credit cards, through overdrafts, short-term installments of commercial housing, etc. In contrast, during times of crisis, Isaac dedicated himself to planting crops and digging wells, not to getting into debt to the point that the Torah says that he became very wealthy in Genesis 26, verses 13 to 16. We also read about Esau in this portion. He was an apparently strong, virile, and powerful man within his Canaanite society. But he also fulfills those characteristics in Proverbs 6 and Mishlei 6, verses 16 to 19. There are 6 things that the Lord hates. Yes, 7 that are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that thinks bad thoughts, evil thoughts, feet that speed towards evil, the false witness who breathes lies, and the one who sows discord between brothers. So let's examine these characteristics of Esau, which we just read. First, arrogance, haughty eyes. Bereshit 25:32 tells us that before receiving his blessing, Esau decided that it was not enough for him. Esau said, "Behold, I am at the point of death, so what good is the birthright to me?" Later, Yaakov offers him gifts. And then we read in Bereshit 33:9, and Esau said, "I have much, my brother." Both expressions portray the idea of arrogance, born out of an ungrateful heart that cannot appreciate anything beyond the material. Second, a lying tongue. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs expounds upon the following comment by Rashi 25:27. Esav says the Torah knew how to catch, Yodea Tza'id. Isaac loved him because he caught with his mouth, Ki Tza'id B'fiv. Esav, Rashi says, caught Isaac through his mouth. This is Rashi's comment to he knew how to catch. How can we understand this? Esau changed Ahalivama's name, that was one of his wives, to Yehudit, which means Jewess, to deceive his father into believing that she had renounced idolatry. But it seems that the Shekhinah withdrew from Isaac's house when his daughters-in-law entered. Then we read in 27:36, "For this reason he was named Yaakov, for he deceived me twice. He took my birthright, and now, behold, he has taken away my blessing." Did Yaakov really deceive him? Did Esau not sell his birthright and blessing to him like the noonday sun? That is, Esau uttered lies. Third, hands that shed innocent blood. Bereshit 25:27 says, "And Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field." We see this same idea in Nimrod, a powerful hunter. The Midrash said that on the day he was tired of the field, he came in from killing Nimrod. And the blessing of his father indicates that he would live by his sword. Fourth, a heart that thinks evil thoughts. Bereshit 27:41 says, "And Isaac bore a grudge against Jacob for the blessing which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of my father's mourning shall end, and I will kill Jacob my brother." Holding a grudge, desiring the death of one's neighbors, are evil thoughts. Fifth, feet that speed or hasten toward evil. Bereshit 28:9 tells us that after Esau realized that his wives were not to his father's liking, because they practiced idolatry, he ran to find Ishmael's daughter and took Mahalat as his wife. Bereshit Rabbah 67:8-13 states that this marriage was a guideline for Esau to plan the death of Yaakov and Yitzhak. So this marriage was a ke mahalah, an infliction, and that this woman was as wicked as his previous wives. Sixth, the false witness who breathes lies. Esau used outward goodness to deceive his father, such as hunting and preparing soups to please him, but with the wrong intentions. So Isaac is said to have been blinded, for as Shemot 23:8 says, "You shall not receive a bribe, for a bribe blinds those who see and perverts the words of the righteous." Seventh, he who sows discord among his brothers. It's clear that the breakup of Isaac's family came when Rivka realized that Esau was planning to murder his brother, forcing him to flee for 20 years. When we compare the Haftarah with these characteristics, it's not strange that God hates Esau. As we read in Malachi 1, verses 2-3, and which are repeated in Mishlei, where it says that he fulfilled those qualities that make a human being hated by God. If Esau had not been a man dominated by his emotions, his evil thoughts, short-term desires, and immediate pleasures, and had been like Yaakov and Ishtam, a man of integrity, perhaps there would have been a different outcome. We live in a world of illusion. The word olam portrays the idea of eternity, but also of concealment. This is a world of concealment. It covers up the truth so that we can easily be deceived by appearances. We may admire certain people, but are they capable of governing themselves? Or is their life a mirage? Self-governance is not about who has the ability to restrict oneself, to make oneself suffer, or to deprive oneself, like an ascetic. Rather, it is about who can fulfill the original design for mankind. We were created to exercise lordship, dominion over creation. However, how many people today live like slaves of creation and do not have dominion or lord over it? Some may be slaves to an herb like tobacco or marijuana. Others are slaves to sugar, others to alcohol, others to paper money, among the many things. It's time for us to govern, but especially to govern ourselves. My desire this Shabbat is that we emulate the characteristics of Isaac, and not those of Esau, that we be ish tam or ishat tama, that we live a life of balance and with parnasa, riches, and in this world of apparent contradictions, of disguises, that we be light. As Tehillim 36:9 says, "For with you lies the fountain of life. In your light will we see the light." Being close to the Borei Olam eliminates hiding, because he illuminates everything that we prefer to conceal. Shabbat Shalom.